and welcome back to Sportshire. I'm your host, Griff McClelan, and today I'm joined by community member Pam Namlich, Long Trail School basketball varsity coach Seth Rice, and LTS student Mike Daley. In today's episode, we will dive into the upcoming NBA season. First, let's start by talking about the Boston Celtics. Where do you want to start? Let's talk about Hayward and Irving.
Well, I think the Celtics are looking very promising this year with Kyrie coming back after missing most of last season. They got a lot of bench players like point guard Terry Rozier's looking good. He got a lot of minutes, and with Hayward out, we saw Jaylen Brown and
Jason Tatum, too.
And Jason Tatum, yeah, both excelled and got a lot of minutes. I think they're looking good top to bottom.
Yeah, they went a lot farther in the playoffs than we expected without Irving and Hayward. Now just think what they could do when they're both healthy.
I think they're looking exceptional.
Yes. What'd you guys say about that?
Well, I think they're off to a bit of a slow start trying to get their chemistry together, and I hope it doesn't cost them in the end because the Toronto Raptors are looking awfully good, and the Celtics have really struggled in Toronto. So if they don't have the home court advantage come playoff time with Toronto, that could be trouble for them.
Yeah, home court advantage is a huge key in the playoffs.
Certainly is.
Definitely.
Absolutely. You know, but Brad Stevens is a very smart man. He's made a terrific transition from college to pro, and if anybody can help figure out that chemistry and figure out a way for them to go together, that's the guy to do it.
Yeah, and I was surprised that Brad Stevens did not win Coach of the Year last year, and instead Dwayne Casey of Toronto did after he had just been fired.
Well, he won it before he was fired, I think.
He did, yes.
Yeah, but you know, the Toronto Raptors, I think, certainly had a great season last year, and you know, I don't think you could really fault that choice.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, they have a new look this season with Kawhi Leonard, and so far they're off to a fantastic start. They look like a big threat to the Celtics. You'd agree with that, definitely?
I definitely do. They match up very well with the Celtics. They can play small ball. I think the matchup with the Celtics and Kawhi is just so multi-dimensional that he presents a problem.
Well, then our friends the 76ers are going to get in there. I think it makes some things interesting, I hope, if they can kind of get their act together.
See, I'm not just high on the 76ers. I don't think they have enough shooting to go around.
No?
You know, they had two great shooters last year that they lost in the offseason. I think those guys really propelled them last year.
What would you say about Philly?
I also think Philadelphia may lack a little bit of the fire hardness of some of the other older teams. I don't know if when it comes to playoff season they're going to be ready to duke it out.
They're still pretty young. They made a huge run last year. They were terrible for years, and they finally got it all together. So they'll be fun to watch for years. But maybe you're saying this isn't the year just yet.
Yeah, I think they still need some more development. Maybe bring in other key pieces.
I don't know. Young legs are always better than old legs when you get running down the end to the finals.
Yes. Anyways, another team in the Eastern Conference is the Indiana Pacers. They have a new look without Paul George now. They're now led by Victor Oladipo. They came so close to knocking off LeBron James last year. What would you say? Is Indiana a big threat?
I don't see them as a big threat. I think they lack the outside shooting as well, the consistent three-point shooting to contend with the other teams. And I don't think they match up that well with Toronto or the Celtics.
Would you say?
I think the Pacers are a little bit too slow of a team to play with the Celtics. Their bigs aren't as versatile. I don't think they can really play playoff basketball against the Celtics' young legs.
Interesting. Also interesting what you talk about, Mike, with pace. You know, so far this year, just the general run and gun pace of the game has definitely picked up, at least in the Western Conference, and it's going to be interesting to see who can keep up with that after a while.
Yeah, this year in the East, we'll obviously see a new champion with LeBron out of the East now. He's made it to the finals the last 8 years, the last 4 with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've started 1-10 though. I think they're clearly out of the picture. Yeah, it'll be an interesting season. We'll see a new team there. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Right. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, I think they might be the third best team in the East right now.
Giannis.
I rank them higher than the Sixers myself.
I agree with that. I actually think that if the Bucks can pull it together this year, they might have the MVP and maybe even the Coach of the Year if Budenholzer can bring the boys together.
No.
Totally, yeah. All right, let's move to the Western Conference now.
Okay.
Let's start by talking about the Golden State Warriors, obviously. They've created the most unfair roster in the history of sports. They won 73 games with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson leading the way. Then they added Kevin Durant. And now they're back-to-back champions. They've added DeMarcus Cousins, too. This is just so unfair. I don't see how. I mean, they're probably going to win the West again. No team has ever won the West 5 years in a row, though.
Interesting.
So we'll see.
I think they're a hands-down favorite. I
yeah.
think the rest of the pack is going to be 6, 8, 10 games behind them in the regular
Perhaps.
season.
Potentially.
I actually think the Warriors might finish second behind the Rockets. I think that,
Like last year.
yeah, I think Kerr would opt more to rest his players and not worry too much about the regular season and focus on the playoffs. Keep everyone well rested.
The only problem with that is the Rockets are way behind already. I mean, they're off to a very slow start, and they have Carmelo, and teams with Carmelo don't have a great track record.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
Especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, Houston, they came so close to being Golden State last year. They took them to Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals. There's high hope for them this season. Obviously, roster changes with Carmelo Anthony now. I still think, yeah, they have a slow start. They could still potentially beat Golden State, though. I mean, you can't win it every year for Golden State's sake.
But how many in a row did you say was the record?
4.
So they've only got 2. They've got a ways to go yet still, right, before they get there.
Or they've made it 4 years in a row. But
Right.
Championship,
3 out of
they
4,
could win
right?
it. This
Yeah.
would be their 3rd title in a row, their 4th in 5 years, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Definitely. Another team we can't forget about in the West is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Russell Westbrook's injured as of late, but if they can stay healthy, they could potentially go far and be a threat to Houston and Golden State. What would you say about that?
I think they're another team that lacks consistent three-point shooting, and their center is not the modern-day center that's versatile, as we talked about earlier. So I think, especially against Golden State, that's a bad matchup for them.
Yeah, with Kevin Durant, Golden State, though, that's a whole new story. But yeah, they had Carmelo Anthony last year. It slowed them down, honestly. There was talk that they had formed this new big three with Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. Didn't really click, though. They could never really establish good, solid team chemistry. But now that they've added Dennis Schroeder, I think he's a more versatile player than Anthony is. I think he complements Westbrook and George better. So I think that's a win for them, actually.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Carmelo's really, to my opinion, an individual contributor. He's never really played
not a team player.
ball.
Right.
Yeah,
He's really not.
yeah.
I think the Thunder are going to finish a little below where everyone else thinks they will this year. I think their offense is a little too stagnant. Their point guard, Russell Westbrook, he pads stats, but I don't know if he's really the point guard you want to win a championship. I think that they need to add a little more off-ball movement. There's too much standing up at the top of the key. They need to move the ball a little more and set some more down screens. I just don't think they have good enough team chemistry to make a good berth this year.
Surely he can churn out plenty of triple-doubles each season, but it may not be enough
Yeah.
in the playoffs when it matters most. All right, another team in the West, the Utah Jazz. They made huge improvements last year, led by Donovan Mitchell, who I think should have been Rookie of the Year. But what do you think about the Jazz? Are they a threat, or are they not quite there yet?
I think the Jazz are looking definitely solid. They're a young team. I think they still might have a few years, maybe more pieces they need to add, but they definitely have good young talents with Mitchell and also Gobert. He's a freak athlete under the rim, good protector. There's nothing more you can ask for with a modern center.
Exactly.
Except maybe a three-point shot.
True.
Yes. All right, now let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Probably the most discussed team of the offseason. Obviously, they added LeBron James. What else can you say about that?
There's a lot of work to do.
I mean, a lot of work, yeah. They need to establish good team chemistry. Like any team LeBron joins, they always seem to get off to a slow start, but then always seem to find their groove later on.
Yeah, I don't know the parts around him are that good. I mean, he's always had good shooting point guards, and they certainly don't have that with Ball and the ex-Celtic Rondo. I also question their defensive tenacity. I don't think they're all bought into playing defense, and LeBron might get frustrated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It was interesting in getting ready for the show, doing a little research. It was interesting. So Luke Walton and LeBron were drafted in the same year. Kind of interesting to think
It's
about
like
that
LeBron's
when
the
you see
coach.
where they are now.
Yeah. Just like in Cleveland, though he wasn't, it was as if he was their coach.
Yes.
Any team LeBron goes on, they're automatically going to be favorites.
Well, yes and no. I mean, certainly it ups their stake, but
Yes.
to Seth's point, I think there's a lot of chemistry to figure out there. And one thing I think LeBron is good at is he's not infinitely patient, but he'll be patient enough to try to help figure that out. He also, at some point, will decide that he's not going to be patient any longer. So we'll see where that pendulum swings.
Yeah.
I also think that, I mean, he's been really lucky. I know he's a freak athlete, but he's been relatively healthy his entire career.
Absolutely.
And that's really unique for a guy who's played so many games when he had all the playoff games in his career and the Olympic games. And, I mean, he came right out of high school, so he has a lot of wear on the tires, and I think at some point it's going to catch up to him. I mean, I think he's been lucky that it hasn't already.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's interesting, you look at the Celtics last year, right, with Kyrie. I mean, you never know, right? One injury can turn the whole tide, and that certainly happened with them, I think, to a certain degree.
Certainly, yeah. LeBron, obviously, before moving to LA this past offseason, he's played his entire career in the Eastern Conference. He's had a pretty smooth ride, per se. He hasn't really had the toughest competition to get to the finals the last 8 straight years. Now that he's in the West, though, he has to go up against Golden State, Houston, Oklahoma City, teams like that. So I predict this will be the year we see LeBron's 8-year final streak come to an end.
Oh, yeah,
I think that's possible.
He could potentially, if LA's able to establish a good team around him and a good supporting cast as well, they could potentially make a finals run in the next few years, but this is not the year.
Yeah.
I think another team we got to talk about is the Denver Nuggets.
Red hot to start.
Red hot to start. I watched them play the other night, and they play very well as a team. It was Jamal Murray. I mean,
Yes.
he's right up there with Donovan Mitchell, I think, as far as scoring ability to take a game over. And I think that team is the team to watch.
Interesting.
Do you think they'll end up being a 3-seed or higher in the playoffs, or is that too early to call?
I think that's too early to call, but I think they'll definitely be ahead of the Lakers.
Potentially, yeah. Right now they have better team chemistry.
I think the Lakers are going to struggle to make the playoffs, to tell you the truth. I mean, you got some teams like Portland and the Spurs that are always there, and it's going to be tough.
I think the Jazz, or the Nuggets, sorry. The Nuggets are looking pretty good this year. I think Mike Malone, another candidate for Coach of the Year. Paul Millsap's also back. I think that's been a little under the radar, but he's coming back and adding some versatility to the team. Jamal Murray, although he's a polished scorer, or he seems to be a somewhat polished scorer now, he hasn't faced enough opposition to really adversity to see how good he is.
Yeah, it's only the start of a young season. We'll see if they can continue this.
Yeah.
But right now they're looking golden. They're looking pretty good. All right, and you mentioned Portland earlier. Yeah, they're off to a pretty good start. They usually have low expectations, but always seem to exceed them and make the playoffs. But last year they were a 3-seed and got swept in the first round by the New Orleans Pelicans. So is the backcourt of the dynamic duo Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum enough for Portland?
Not to be contenders in the playoffs, but definitely to get them a good spot in the regular season, at the end of the season, and maybe to finish higher than the Lakers and the Timberwolves.
A lot of teams could finish higher than the Lakers.
Yeah.
Would you say so?
I think as long as LeVar Ball stays out of the way, that maybe the Lakers have a chance.
Yes. Yeah, that's a problem too.
Yes, it is.
Anywhere Alonso goes, LeVar goes too.
I think that's right.
Yes. All right, let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. Now, this is interesting. They've made the playoffs in 21 consecutive seasons, which is remarkable, all led by Greg Popovich, one of the greatest coaches of all time. This year, though, the streak is a little bit more in danger than we've seen it in years past. Yeah, they're off to a pretty solid start, but is this the year we see their playoff streak come to an end?
I think the Spurs might finish 9th this year. That's my prediction. I think missing Kawhi is going to be huge for them. They still do have
They lose depth.
Yeah, they lose depth. They still have one of the best coaches in the NBA. I think that I think in the West this year, teams like the Spurs or the Thunder, formerly they've been able to just throw a few games away, not really worry about it. But I think the West is really at a point where it's too tough for a team to throw away games, and I don't think the Spurs are going to be able to make a strong playoff run.
See, I don't think they're going to throw away games this year because they don't have the old players they've had to rest where they were throwing away those games. I think they are better than people think, and they have a strong system, a strong belief system there. I think that's going to propel them into the playoffs again. I think they're a lock in the playoffs, actually.
That's interesting.
They could be, as long as you have a great coach like Popovich and great team chemistry. It doesn't matter about the superstars. They don't have any big names
Well,
other
they got
than
DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan.
And Aldridge.
Aldridge.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Decent, yeah.
Yeah, they're more than decent.
Yeah,
I think.
so.
I mean, both of those guys can get 25 or 30 on a given night. And, that certainly helps.
Yeah, they could perhaps sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think. All right, let's look ahead to the playoffs now. Let's think about the conference finals here. This is tough to call early on, obviously. But in the East, I have Boston over Philadelphia. I think, yeah, Toronto is off to a very fast start. Their biggest struggle is winning in the playoffs. They haven't proven that they can win in the playoffs yet. Yeah, they have a new identity, a new look this season, which could get them over the edge, but I just think Philadelphia, they came so close last year, they'll compete with Boston, but I have Boston over Philly in 5. I think this is the year that Boston goes to the finals again. Did you say?
I'm going to actually have to take Boston over Philadelphia as well. I think that Philadelphia is going to come together strong at the end of the season. I think Coach Stevens has said this, that a lot of Celtics fans have very high expectations for the team, and that some of them may even be too high, that he doesn't think they're maybe as ready as a lot of fans think they are. I think they're going to win maybe in 6 or 7, but I don't know if they're ready to take that leap of just getting an easy run.
I think Coach Stevens is also a smart man, and
Yes,
he's
very
managing
wise.
expectations, right? So that's exactly what I would expect him to say at this point.
Yeah, he has helped rebuild that team very, very well. Do you think the Celtics are going to the finals?
I think the Celtics are probably going to the finals. And besides that, it helps me to say that with my neighbor, the Celtics fan, so that I don't have,
See, I'm not so sure. I think it's going to be the Celtics in Toronto. And I think, Toronto went out early last year, but DeRozan was absolutely horrible in that series. And I think if Kawhi is healthy, and he's not going to be horrible, he's going to be a difference maker. And I think it's if Toronto has home court over the Celtics, that's going to be a very tough series for the Celtics to win. I mean, I think they could win it, but I think those two teams are going to duke it out at the end.
All right.
I'm not as high on Philadelphia as a lot of people are.
All right. Well, I can't wait to find out how the Eastern Conference Finals play out. All right, to the West now. Let's start with Pam.
Yeah, no, Golden State, there's something about practice makes perfect for sure. And, they have done it. I would think that you would see them come out to the finals. I don't know how many it'll take them, but, there's something about having gone through it and the seasoning that comes with that makes it just a little bit easier to get there.
I think it's going to be Golden State, hands down. I don't know who they're going to play. It could be one of 4 or 5 teams, I think. But Golden State's defense is underrated. I mean, they consistently rank very high in the defensive numbers, and they have so many guys that can score from so many different places on the floor that I just don't think they're unbeatable. I mean, the Celtics match up well with them if the Celtics get to the finals, but out west, I don't think anyone's going to touch them.
So you think Golden State's going to go all the way?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Interesting.
Same for you?
I think that's probably right, although it'll be interesting, just to see. We've talked about so many unknowns already this season. I mean, certainly that's the absolute known, but it'll be interesting to see what else happens, really how the Celtics really do come together. Anything could happen.
Yes.
I would have to agree. I think the addition of DeMarcus Cousins is going to be too much for any other team to handle. I think that overall, top to bottom, they're the best team in the NBA, and they really are a super team. Yeah.
They are. They were a super team with Kevin Durant. They were close to a super team before that even.
Yes.
They just keep finding ways to get better every year. And the reason they added all those players just to beat LeBron pretty much.
Well, and they got Cousins on the cheap. I mean, they didn't have to spend
Yeah,
much on him.
did not.
And that gives them the opportunity. They can play small, or they can play big with him at center. I mean, they've done really well playing small in the playoffs. Very difficult to match up when they do that.
Especially with Cousins' improved three-point shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far Golden State's the heavy favorite to make the finals. I'm going to go a little different here. I, being a diehard OKC Thunder fan, I can't stand... I understand this is completely biased, but I just...
We're glad.
Golden State's beaten up on us over the past few years. They even stole Kevin Durant from us. I think this is the year, assuming Westbrook, George, Schroeder, everyone on the team can stay healthy, they could potentially be a threat to Golden State. I'm going with OKC over Golden State in 7 games, and then I think OKC will beat Boston in 6 games in the finals.
I think potentially is the best word in your sentence.
I'm always hoping, but I seriously think if the Thunder can stay healthy, they are a lock to go deep in the playoffs.
Interesting. And we didn't even talk about Steph Curry anywhere along the way.
We did not. No, that's how loaded they are. Exactly. All right, any closing remarks?
I think it's just interesting, the competitiveness and the dynamic in the West versus the East. It's such a different load of talent, it feels like these days. I wonder, when you look back over the years, has that pendulum swung?
I think it has swung a little bit to the East. I mean, I think in the past, the West has been top-heavy, and I think now it's the Warriors and then some mediocre teams after that. Whereas in the East, I think you have 5 very strong teams. I don't know what's wrong with the Wizards. I mean, they should be in the mix, and
they ought to be, yeah.
They got Dwight Howard. That might be the problem. I mean, he's another guy like Carmelo that teams with him don't have great track records. So, but the rest of that team's intact, and they've done well in the past. So I don't know what's going on there, but that's my early season surprise is how poorly they're doing.
Interesting.
I think that the Wizards, if they can find a way to get chemistry early on, then that'll be beneficial. But if they can't make anything till late, then their playoff run will.
Then it might be time to break up their roster.
Yeah, I think so. A little bit of a rebuild, or a large rebuild potentially.
It may be necessary for Washington. We'll see how it plays out. But at the moment, things are not looking good for the Wizards.
I'm also looking forward to it sounds like they're talking about the All-Star Draft being televised.
That'll
I think
be fun.
it could be a highly entertaining show.
Yeah, it'll just be like a pickup game. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I guess last year there were some concerns on the union's part not to have that televised because what might or might not have been said, but I guess now there's interest, and obviously it's an event for the league, and it'd be interesting to see that happen.
All right, well, that wraps up for today. Thank you for watching Sportshire. We'll see you next time.